and try to talk about some of the different things that I was forced to do, and then when the United States terminated my parental rights. But essentially, they terminated my parental rights after they got the different diagnostics that they wanted for the torture that they had done against me and my son. So once the United States got an IQ test and made another group feel pretty good because they wanted to dumb me down and maybe keep me from being part of some kind of a group where, I don't know, you had to have a certain IQ. I mean, I knew that there was something riding on that IQ test. But they did that to me, and then they wanted a CT because it was time. It was time for me to have a CT because I was past the deadline. The United States wanted to follow their torture program, and they needed to have some documentation. So guess who that documentation was going to? It was being sent to the Attorney General, Marianne McIntosh, who was connected to the military, and to the state, which basically means it then goes to the federal government eventually. And my records were being obtained by Justin Titus, because by the time I had my parental rights terminated, they terminated my parental rights after they got what they wanted out of me. They tortured me and my son. They forced my son away from me, put him into programming, and tortured him. And then they used me, degraded me, forced me to do certain diagnostic tests. And then as soon as they had that information and did that, they terminated my parental rights. And then they continued torturing me, because now they had their latest baseline. So now they're going to do other things and see what happens next time they get a CT. And that's what they did. They got a CT from me in, let's see, I guess it was 2009. And 3 years later, they got another one. They tortured me so badly that it forced me to go to a hospital here, locally, and they did a CT of my neck and of my head. And they did two of them. So it's been on an every 3 years basis that the United States government has tortured me and drugged me and then wanted a CT to follow up. So right now they have about 4 or 5 CTs on me. And they track their progress, or whatever they consider to be progress, as they ruin my life. It's been exactly every 3 to 4 years that the United States government has had people then pushing me to get a CT of my head. Actually, my head and my neck, and they use both of those sites for putting microchip implants into me and for torturing me. And they know that, and the effects, mainly they care about looking at what the effects are to my head and my neck. So every 3 to 4 years, the government starts tapping into an excuse for getting more information off of me after they've committed crimes. So they terminated my parental rights because they got what they wanted. They found a convenient excuse for doing it because I had already said I wasn't. They tried to get me to do a CT for migraines in Wenatchee because I was at the 3 to 4 year mark. And I said, no, that's not necessary. I've already had my migraines diagnosed and I'm comfortable with that. 2 different neurologists diagnosed them and that's just fine. So when I didn't do that, then they tortured the living daylights out of both me and my son, took my son from me, started torturing him and used him for programming, and then they got their CT that they wanted. And they continued their hate crimes. And after that, I was then told, well, since I was denied a lawyer all that time for, a normal public defender, to actually put any information into the record that would have helped me and my son, at termination of my parental rights, the judge said, okay, I will give you a lawyer for this hearing about the termination of your parental rights. And he assigned me to an Irish Catholic law firm. He gave me a Jewish lawyer, Justin Titus, and knowing that he was part of this Irish Catholic law firm, and one of the women who worked there had kids that worked for the Department of Defense. So then when Justin Titus is asking for all of my records to be sent to him, he was basically taking all of my personal records, as in IQ results and CT of my head and neck, that kind of thing, and he's passing them along to the Department of Defense and to other individuals. And I actually tried to block my lawyer, that lawyer, from obtaining my CT of my head, because I realized that I couldn't trust him, and then I later found out there was a huge conflict of interest. His wife was was best friends with one of the social workers that was on my case, and I attempted to block. I put in an official block to keep him and that law firm from obtaining my CT, and they ignored it and they took it anyway. Basically, this government is just criminal. It's like, I mean, who can go along with this? What kind of a president, vice president, Senate, Congress, House, judge, lawyer, doctor, what kind of a person goes along with this? I mean, isn't there anybody, FBI, CIA, isn't there anybody that is going to stand up for my family and for the horrible torture that we've had to go through? I mean, is this what the rest of my life is looking like? A little checkup and a little checking in every 3 or 4 years by the government after I get tortured further? Because all that this country has done is ruin my life and ruin my son's life, and I don't want that for my son. My son needs to be returned to me. And this country really is on its last leg, as long as this country continues to do what they've done to us. It's on its last leg. If you want to get your leg back, maybe you should start talking.